My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
With their pursuit of the Prithian half of the Book of Breathings at a standstill, Rhysand and Feyre go to the mortal realm to seek the help of the Archeron family. But when Feyre's remade body and the company she keeps put the peace of Nesta and Elaine's lives at risk, Feyre is met with resistance before her sisters concede to a plan to call on the queens of the realm. While the group waits for their plans to be set in motion, Feyre begins to train her powers and is captured by the Adder. The realization that Tamlin was right to fear for her safety, and the fact that Rhysand used her as bait, brings Feyre to a crossroads in her journey through immortality.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, self-harm, and depression will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we are exploring Sarah J. Maas's most beloved novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series.
This is Jac.
And I'm Amy.
This week, we're discussing chapters 22 through 28 in A Court of Mist and Fury.
The question we ask ourselves this week is, how has Feyre's perception of who or what she is changed?
Some themes we're going to see this week are deception and honesty, as well as wakefulness.
Prior to chapter 22, Rhys shared a memory with Feyre about an encounter with Ianthe before the Blight. In sharing this memory, we argued that greater empathy for Rhysand was formed. We see this theme continue in these next few chapters, particularly with Mor and Asriel. These moments are building upon the groundwork Sarah J. Maas laid in chapter 16 during the first introduction to the Inner Circle.
It's almost as if Feyre seeing a vulnerable side of Rhysand allowed her to open up with the others in the court. He set a precedence on whether or not Feyre can make a connection to others. I will say that I don't believe it's Rhys who's doing this, but Feyre herself. Feyre denied herself a connection with anyone after Tamlin, and now that Rhys has slipped in, everyone might as well too.
I just see them all like single file slipping into her brain or something. Like, la-di-da.
And we're here. I mean, it is kind of single file, like Mor, then Asriel, then Cassian.
Yep.
Oh, then Amryn, then Cassian. Anyway.
We see this at the open of chapter 22 with Mor, as she and Feyre chat prior to Feyre's departure for the mortal realms. We learn that some traditions of the High Fae in the Court of Nightmares and how they treat women is not unlike the role of women in human society. As Feyre explains, quote, "Nowadays, most women wed, bear children, and then plan their children's marriages. The wealthier they are, the more restricted their freedoms and roles become." Mor reveals a little of her background at this point, and how the High Fae sell their daughters' virginity to form powerful alliances. In this way, women, and Mor herself, are viewed, quote, as prized mares. others saw Moor's power and wanted it bred into their bloodline. This parallels how Feyre was treated earlier in this book at the Spring Court under the tutelage of Ianthe.
People just can't stop being compared to horses here.
Nope.
When I say people, I mean women. In the Spring Court, Feyre was a re-virginized being who was marrying Tamlin to help make the Spring Court a more powerful place. The concept of virginity as a commodity is unfortunately a very common one, but this is the first time that we're getting a taste of it within this world. And it's the first time Feyre is seeing it firsthand. When Moor turned 17, she finally got her period, which then triggered her powers awakening, and it was described as being so powerful the mountains trembled. Despite women being bought and sold like animals, there is power in blood, particularly menstrual blood. Damn right. And yet it's also a ticking time bomb of inevitability.
We saw this with Rhys's mother, too.
Mm-hmm.
She was allowed to fly until she bled, and then she tried to escape, but then she was captured, and they tried to clip her wings at that point.
It's almost as if men are afraid of periods.
Well, yeah, yes, they are. They don't understand.
I mean, of course there's a fear because there's a certain power of it, right? Like, it's just like women have grown into their bodies, right? Like,
right.
It's powerful. I know it can symbolize the ability of creating life, even though that's like freaking hard, but it's also hardcore. Like, we bleed monthly.
Yeah.
Fear me. It's
because I can withstand a whole lot more than you can.
Exactly.
I honestly think that men deep down have always envied a woman's ability to both give life and take life, whereas they're only capable of taking life. And that's why they put women down for it.
I'm not sure if I said this on the podcast before, but I heard somewhere that if women were more comfortable with killing, we would be in charge of the world.
Oh, 100%.
I don't know what the moral of the lesson here is on that, but...
There are no morals here.
Not on BookTok for BookTok.
Nope.
No morals to be found. Even though we haven't seen such overt sexism in this book, or really women being pulled down, it is important to note that Moor's people are not unlike those in the rest of Prythian.
Feyre, in her growing empathy for Moor, thinks, quote, "She got out, I reminded myself. Moor got out, and now lived with people who cared for her, who loved her." When I read this quote, it made me think about how each member of the inner circle is an example of someone who got out of their worst circumstances. I think on some level this explains why Feyre is not only able to feel empathy for each of them, but also grows attached to each of them. Think about it. Amren got out of the prison. Moor got out of the Court of Nightmares. Asriel got out of his father's dungeon and away from his brothers. Cassian got out of his fate as a low-born Illyrian bastard. And Rhys got out of a lot of things, really, but based on Feyre's limited knowledge of him at this moment, she knows he got out from under the mountain.
It's a big thing to come out of.
It is a big thing to come out of. But he got out a lot more shit, too.
Oh, yeah. A quick comment about fashion here. Feyre is dressing up in the Fae fashion while talking about mortal fashion, which is more conservative and has layers. Feyre doesn't even really know what mortal fashion is like, since she only wore it for a short time when she visited her sisters. What Feyre is wearing is probably the most foreign fashion she's worn to date. Feyre is wearing a small diadem of gold with matching jewelry. Rhys is the one who's dressing Feyre up to look like a queen. And despite this being the biggest change in Feyre's wardrobe, looking like a Fae queen, Feyre isn't fighting it, so dare I say that maybe Tamlin even prepared her for it.
I think you're right there. I think that this is a uniform for her, and I'll explain why in a moment.
This does also kind of give me some early American Puritan vibes because the mortal lands, they don't celebrate anything. They don't really do holidays, joyless, and then they're like super conservatively dressed.
I can see that, and that also explains their very intense aversion to anything foreign, aka fairies.
Yep.
As Jack mentioned, part of Feyre's attire includes jewelry, the headpiece being a small diadem of gold flecked with lapis lazuli. Now, I did take a moment to look up lapis lazuli, and if you're not familiar with it, it is a semi-precious stone of intense blue. Dare I say, crushing blue, maybe even violet. The translation of lapis lazuli means stone of sky or stone of heaven. I'm going to take a stab here, and I'm going to say that this represents the Night Court, or maybe even Rhysand.
I love that you looked that up. I didn't even think about looking it up.
I feel like when an author chooses something like that, A, it's intentional, B, they're just taunting you to look it up. And normally I don't. But for this podcast, I did the work.
Right. It's like, fine, I guess I'll do a literary analysis.
I guess I have to look. As I've mentioned before, Feyre hates jewelry, especially crowns and diadems. Remember, she didn't want Tamlin to gift her a crown or a diadem. Yet, as Jac points out, she's not fighting putting on this headpiece or the jewelry. She puts it on without question. I think it's part of her uniform as emissary, and because it's not necessarily hers, it's the role's, she's okay with putting it on. I'm going to make just a random observation. A passing comment from Moore lets readers know that she and Cassian used alcohol to change Rhys's mind about Moore joining the quest in the mortal realms. In this way, Rhysand has been taken advantage of through the use of alcohol. Though it is not an identical match, it does in some ways parallel Feyre in Thorns and Roses, the ways she was taken advantage of multiple times with alcohol. What comes around goes around.
Yeah, Rhys. Yeah.
Or what goes around comes around. I totally said that wrong.
I'm still agreeing with it.
The physical attraction to Rhys that Feyre has so far been trying to ignore is back and alive in this chapter. When Feyre sees Rhys in the hall, she, quote, took one look at Rhys and felt those hands on my thighs again. But Feyre refuses to let herself finish dangerous thoughts about Rhys and chooses Azriel as neutral territory because, remember, Cassian's no longer an option. Now look, I'm here for the slow burn. I love the angst of this, but...
There's no but.
There's no but.
There's no but.
There is no but.
Because I get it. Like, oh, I'm super attracted to Rhysand. Let me go throw myself in the arms of Daddy Azzy. Like, yeah, sure, I'm conflicted. Oh, no.
Let me just make him jealous.
Can't finish that thought. Azriel, get over here.
It's totally something I would do.
Yeah.
By choosing to fly with Azriel to the mortal realms, Feyre has an opportunity to deepen her bond with him, though this happens to be a serendipitous consequence of her actions to avoid Rhys. Feyre stumbles in conversation with Azriel, not knowing whether to call herself human or fae. Azriel responds to this with, quote, "You'll get used to it," the wording. Feyre says, "I don't really know where I fit anymore." As, "I've been alive almost 5.5 centuries, and I'm not sure of that either." I think this is a really beautiful moment. I feel like this is akin to the moment in adulthood when I realized that, no matter my age, I don't necessarily have to have everything figured out. There is something liberating in the certainty that nothing is certain. Even after 500 years, Azriel still feels his otherness, and though that could be daunting, it forms a kinship between Az and Feyre.
Also, think of the start of this chapter, with Feyre and Moore talking and opening up. Feyre now has the green light to talk to the inner circle, to become friends and get to know them. She chose the one who she felt like would be safest, or she chose the most daddy of them all.
Most daddy of them all. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the most daddy of them all?
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was waiting for you so I could say it. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the most daddy of them all?
Why are we so stupid?
We're geniuses. We're something.
We are something.
Yeah, you guys signed up to listen to this.
Yep. Upon arrival in the human lands, and at the sight of the winter-ravaged forests, Feyre thinks, my home. This is the first time Feyre has thought of home since leaving the Spring Court. Why is it these lands, the forests she hunted in, that sparks this connection to home for her?
It's all through rose-tinted glasses. Feyre never identified as that place as being her home, but now that she's starting to slowly think of Velaris as her home, it would make sense that she needs something to compare it to, and the Spring Court is not an option.
At this point, we enter chapter 23, and something that stood out to me at the start of this chapter is the fact that Feyre observes the roof of the family estate as emerald in color. When I read this, I wondered, is this a sign that Feyre's senses are starting to rekindle? Or is the estate like Velaris, which Feyre also viewed as jewel-like, signaling how it is precious? Fun fact, side note, it was bought with Tamlin's gems and jewels that he gave to the family.
Oh yeah, we'll get more into that. Feyre wonders what a Highburn invasion would do to the humans. Quote, the scars it leaves on a culture, a people, my people, or so they had once been. Although Feyre has always been very human, she has never showed a connection with humans per se. In fact, I would say that it was human cruelty, the fact that people ignored her and her sisters when they were starving, seeing physical abuse amongst families, and just the general coldness. That's what made Feyre who she is, a woman who is jaded but willing to help others. Feyre has no love for these people, but now she's clinging on to humans as if she's always been proud to be one of them, rather than being the very definition of human weakness. It's kind of like how when I went to ASU, Arizona State University, I did not care in the slightest, and yet once I graduated, I am the most sun devil individual there is out there.
Yes, and it's embarrassing.
Not if you lean into it.
I resist.
You don't want me to yell at someone across the way, Sun Devil?
No.
They don't really respond anyway. So.
They don't.
They never respond to me.
do.
They never acknowledge me. No.
When Feyre stands outside her family home, Elaine comes to the open doorway and begins to cry when she recognizes her sister. At that time, Feyre thinks, I backed away a step. I couldn't do this, couldn't bring this upon them. But then, Feyre reminds herself that her sisters will be next if the King of Hybern destroys the wall. And this alone convinces Feyre to move forward. At this point, Feyre steps over the threshold and into the foyer of her family's estate. It is this point that sets in motion all the events that come next with the queens and ultimately with Hybern. In stepping over that threshold, Feyre has paved the way for the remaking of her sisters, the exact opposite of what she expects will come.
Plus, we love a good threshold because nothing will be the same now that Feyre has crossed it.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Would Feyre still have crossed the threshold if she knew it meant her sisters would join her in immortality? So I base my response to this question on something that happens in the next chapter. Feyre wonders in chapter 24, quote, how would it be to speak to them, her sisters, when I remained this way while their skin had grown paper thin and wrinkled? I would be barely into my immortal existence when theirs was wiped out like a candle before a cold breath.
In this book, we get a lot more sisterly love. We see the bond the three sisters share, and we even see the resentful love or lack thereof. If Feyre Book 1 asked your question, Amy, I think she would be sad if her sisters died, but ultimately okay. Now that Feyre is lost and doesn't have a home and doesn't have a thing to call her own, she feels the only other connection she has much more deeply. In the end, it works out. The sisters find peace, some understanding, and immortality seems doable. But if Feyre views immortality as a punishment and not as a reward, like she does to herself, on some level she believes her sisters deserve to be punished since they never were there for her.
So you kind of answered my question?
Yes.
With 2 answers.
Uh-huh. Yep. I'm here to give you all the answers.
Yeah, no. So
my answers were, she doesn't care, / punishment.
Yeah, exactly. I think I choose to believe that if Feyre knew her sisters would be immortal through her choices, it might encourage her even more to do it.
Oh, like she would want to make them. But then it comes like, what's the motivation? Is Feyre doing it for punishment or Feyre doing it for, I don't want to be alone?
I don't know.
I say punishment.
I think I don't want to be alone.
I think she wants to be alone from Nesta.
I think she really does love Nesta.
No, it's not a question of whether you love someone. It's more of, do I want to see you forever?
Yeah. I love you, but I don't like you right now.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like, she wouldn't want to see her sisters die.
Right.
But I don't doubt there's a level of resentment that immortality would help play out there.
Yeah, like you get to suffer with immortality the way I have to suffer with it.
I'm going to give you forever to apologize to me now.
I'm going to give you forever to make up for all the wrongdoing you did to me.
You haven't said sorry yet? Guess what?
Every day for the rest of your immortality.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Eventually. Got all the time in the world, baby.
Once inside with her sisters, Feyre feels like a wolf, too big for their fragile mortal life. In my mind, this is a parallel to how Tamlin in Thorns and Roses entered the family's cabin. He took Feyre from the life she knew, just as Feyre's actions now will take her sisters from the life they currently have. Speaking about Thorns and Roses, it's always irked me that there's this huge difference in how the sisters are presented in Thorns and Roses versus Mist and Fury. And when I reread this chapter, I think it finally clicked for me. Nesta is described as, quote, looking the same, but older. Not in her face, which was as grave and stunning as before, but in her eyes, in the way she carried herself. This is the Nesta who protects Elaine in Mist and Fury and beyond, unlike the Nesta in Thorns and Roses, who envied things Elaine had. So I ask Jacqueline, in assuming that Feyre has died, has Nesta become more protective of Elaine?
I think one of the things in Nesta's storyline, not the biggest spoiler for Silver Flames, but, if you haven't read it, earmuffs. I think that Nesta struggles knowing that she's never been there for Feyre and that she wasn't a good sister. And I don't think Nesta ever fully owns it, to be honest. I think she recognizes, she's like, oh, I hate you that I did that. And I hate this. But I don't think she lets herself feel that way. I think that now that everything Feyre did for them is like out there, right? Like they're living in a nice ass house. Like it's there. The most that Nesta can do is try to be there for Elaine because she was never there for Feyre.
I agree. I feel like in feeling that she's failed Feyre, instead of admitting her faults, making up for it through Elaine.
Yeah, she goes in way too hard on trying to be protective of Elaine.
Yep.
Because that means like Nesta had to live years knowing she wasn't the strong one.
Mm-hmm.
Which must have killed her.
Yeah, that would suck.
And now here she is in a household where she gets to be the strong one.
Yep, you're right.
Nesta, complicated character.
Very complicated.
One thing I love about these sisters is how much things come back to bite them in the ass.
What goes around comes around.
It really does. Nesta's angry at the idea of letting Feyre use their place as a go-between. Quote, when the people around here learn we're Feyre sympathizers, are we any better than the children of the blessed then? Just like Feyre made fun of the children of the blessed, and then she ends up with the Fae, Nesta too will become what the children of the blessed wanted to be.
So basically, folks, the lesson is don't slut shame.
Never slut shame, because then you become what you are shaming.
Exactly.
In that regard, that hoe who slept with Chris Evans...
I can't react. I know exactly that's, you know what, Jack? What goes around comes around.
Oh, no.
Chris Evans is going to come here and punish you.
Yes, please.
The look in your eyes.
My eyes got really big and I looked at you like, yeah.
Now let's turn our attention to Elaine. Elaine, who only cared about gardening and honestly came across as an airhead, speaks to Nesta here when Nesta refuses to aid Feyre. Elaine says, quote, Feyre gave and gave for years. Let us now help her, help others. Feyre gets emotional at this, to be so seen by her sister when for years she felt taken advantage of. It's a pretty moving moment. Elaine also does not hesitate to send the servants home and volunteers herself to communicate with all of them. Quote, Elaine didn't wait for either of us, Feyre and Nesta, before she strode out, graceful as a doe. So I have two thoughts here. First, Elaine is showing strength and boss lady vibes we've never really associated with her before. This is something I think is often overlooked when it comes to her character.
I am most guilty of forgetting how badass and strong Elaine really is. I think it's one of those TikTok tropes that is hard to move away from, but Elaine is so much stronger and badass than I ever gave her credit for. And I'm so excited to point out these moments of strength as we move forward. It's funny, you were talking about Elaine coming off as an airhead, and I'm trying to think, does Elaine actually come off as an airhead?
Or does Feyre perceive her as an airhead?
Exactly, because what has Elaine ever said that makes her come off as an airhead?
Nothing.
She's not been ditzy. She's not been like, oh no, money, I don't know what that is. Like, she's been reserved. She's been chill. She's been quiet.
Right.
But because she's not Nesta, who Feyre would fight with all the time, therefore, yeah. Damn, Feyre.
It's all Feyre's perception.
Feyre ruined TikTok.
It's all Feyre's fault. My second thought is that Elaine is compared to a doe. The only other person who's been compared to a doe so far in this series is Feyre. This could mean one of two things. A, Elaine is the next sacrifice, which we know to be true. Or B, Elaine is more like Feyre than we give her credit for, and has a hidden strength that will only become apparent with time.
This could also mean that Elaine is the next to become the wolf and follow Feyre's evolution. While we don't have a book in Elaine's perspective, we can tell that Elaine has been through hell, but has come out on the other side, which is what Feyre is currently doing in A Court of Mist and Fury, and it's something that it takes Nesta a very long time to do. Now we're back to the joint eyes. Quote, Nesta's eyes, my eyes, our mother's eyes, met mine. In book 1, Feyre struggled to tell the difference between her eyes, Nesta's eyes, and her mother's eyes, and how that really played into Feyre's own lack of identity. But we're starting to see those old insecurities and that old self-hatred starting to come back here.
So I had a thought that aligns with this that I didn't put in my notes. You know how they say that when you go visit your family, you fall into old patterns or you fall into the role you played in your family? Something that we see in this chapter is Feyre starts asking Nesta about Elaine's fiancé. And she takes on that really paternal role that Feyre had in chapter 2 of Thorns and Roses, dictating who people would marry, or you're not going to marry Thomas Mandray. I'll march up to the door of the man that you're supposed to marry, et cetera, et cetera. And so Feyre's falling into her old role of playing the patriarch because her father's an absent patriarch, but also taking on that wavering identity, not really actually knowing who she is.
Yeah. It's funny, as you're talking about that, I'm like, oh, really? You could say that Nesta, because she identifies so much with her mother, or at least like their mother made the biggest impression on Nesta, is the matriarch of the family, because all she's concerned about is
marrying off her daughter.
Exactly. Elaine's got to get married, and then Nesta can figure out her life. And then you have Feyre, who's like you said, she's always been much more the patriarch of that family. So really, they're just bickering like an old married couple.
Exactly. And Elaine's just the sweet old daughter.
She's just like, hey guys, mommy, daddy, please stop fighting.
That makes me sad.
When Nesta asks about Feyre's High Lord, Tamlin, Feyre says, I think what happened to him, to us, under the mountain broke him, perhaps more than it had broken me. Feyre is not only understanding Tamlin more and processing the truth of their breakup, which is inevitable after any breakup, but Feyre is starting to view herself as stronger than Tamlin and more resilient.
Which we've always known to be true.
And now Feyre gets to see that.
Yay.
Proud
Growth.
Growth?
I said growth.
I was saying proud of you.
Okay, you said...
No, I'm just like disappointed that we didn't say it at the same, like we, you know.
We didn't say the same thing.
We didn't say the same thing at the same time. We're better than this.
We are better than this.
Now a word from this episode's sponsor.
Are you looking for ideas to spice up your self-care, or maybe need some inspiration for a date night with your partner?
Meet Cute Box is a themed date night box filled with unique items from small businesses around the world, and it's a great way to add a bit of creativity to your date night with yourself or a significant other.
Membership starts at only $29.99 for boxes value up to $100. Whether you're single, in relationship, engaged, or married, these boxes are tailored to you. Every box you receive is handmade based on your membership profile, so you have a new surprise each month.
If you're looking for ways to keep date nights fun and exciting, or maybe even the perfect self-care night in, you can try Meet Cute Box risk-free by visiting meetcutebox.com and use the code PODCAST for $10 off your first box. Go check it out.
Going into chapter 24, Feyre lets the Bat Boys into her family home, and she takes a moment to really process what this means to her. It's not only given to them by Tamlin, but he allowed that family means to continue growing their own wealth. But it's also evidence that Tamlin is not evil, that he did have a good heart. And that makes Tamlin a complicated character, but we love complicated characters here on BookTok. Quote, yes, he'd given me everything I needed to become myself, to feel safe. And when he got what he wanted, he stopped. Had tried, but not really. He let himself remain blind to what I needed after Amarantha. Feyre acknowledges that Tamlin helped her find her core piece of self, that thing that makes Feyre Feyre. But with Tamlin, Feyre had learned the desire to thrive and not just survive. But by the end of A Court in Thorns and Roses, Tamlin was content just to survive.
I think this is really important to point out because what we're going to see from here on out is this constant seesaw of guilt that Feyre feels when she thinks about Tamlin. Because Feyre can see the good that Tamlin did for her, but resents the fact that he couldn't grow with her, she's constantly feeling this struggle of, I know he's good, but he did bad to me, but he did good for me. And it's just going to cause a lot of conflict.
I mean, it is. That's kind of like the lessons that we all have to learn is that duality of selves, right? People can be two things at once.
Sometimes a good man can hurt you.
Sometimes, oh, yeah. I know what you're doing.
What am I doing?
It's T-Swivel.
That's right.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, because you know you hurt him too.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to come up with the lyrics. It's also sobering for Feyre to be in that home, to recognize who she was the last time she was there. Quote, I'd been a woman in love, such frantic, desperate love that I went back into Prythian. I went under the mountain as a mere human, as fragile as my sisters now seem to be. Feyre is associating her time in love with Tamlin with fragility, and that's not wrong. Feyre was very fragile to the point where she died, not just physically, but emotionally as well. It's hard to disassociate emotions and memories with people, especially when they aren't willing to make new ones. This whole concept of like walking around a home and then feeling like sad because you remember all the times you had there, that made me think of when I had to close out the apartment
last week.
Last week, I was like, oh, so many memories. Yeah. Breakups.
Closing of chapters.
Yeah.
I had a thought based on something that you said. Feyre views her love for Tamlin as fragile as her sisters now seem to be. Does she then, by extension, also view her sister's love or Elaine's relationship with Grayson as fragile? Is that also frantic and desperate because it's human?
You know what's funny is I don't think Feyre takes it seriously.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, it's almost like a joke to her.
It is.
Like, okay, Elaine's engaged. No one cares. Even Nesta's just like flippant about it.
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
I think Nesta respects it a little bit because she's been able to see how in love Elaine is.
Yeah.
But I do think in some ways Feyre's adopted the mentality that Tamlin had in Thorns and Roses of your human joy fascinates me.
Mm-hmm.
Your human love is frantic and desperate, and it's kind of a plaything.
She's starting to like fairy love shame them.
Kind of.
Yeah, interesting. Again, more Silver Flame spoiler here, but I was thinking about how in Silver Flames we find out that Elaine slept with, what's his face?
Oh, Grayson?
Grayson.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I was just thinking about
I totally forgot about that.
Did they do it one time or did they do it multiple times?
I don't remember.
But I'm just imagining, like, you know, she meets Azriel and then goes back to Grayson and is probably thoroughly disappointed.
Oh, yeah. That's never happening.
It's like, oh, this is pleasant. Joy.
Mm-hmm.
Joy.
Your wingspan would be really small.
He has little tiny fairy wings. Not fae wings, little fairy wings.
Fairy.
Little butterflies. Now that Rhys, Cassian, and Azriel are in the house, Feyre finally fully disrobes and her sisters take in Feyre's fae clothing, crown, and jewelry. A stranger, Feyre says. This part of me was now a stranger to them. This is Feyre stripping herself, not just for her family to reveal who she is now, but to her own new self. This is also a stranger to Feyre, a woman who is willing to wear jewelries without question, to wear a crown, to own a status that she isn't even clear on. This separates her from her sisters, but she was always a stranger to them, especially when she was out in the forest trying to hunt for them. Feyre's never really connected to them. The only difference is that this is now a type of other that Feyre can embrace.
When Feyre introduces her sisters to the Bat Boys, she uses the last name Archeron for the first time. She claims that, quote, I stopped using it the day I killed that rabbit, her first kill, and felt its blood stain my hands, the same way the blood of those fairies had marred it years later like an invisible tattoo. Okay, do we actually believe this? Because I definitely thought it was convenient the first time I read it. Or did Sarah J. Maas really not have room or a reason to use the surname in the first book?
I don't know. I feel like we both know that it's something that she forgot to include or something in the first book, but I don't care. Not like that you care, but I don't care because she did it in such a clever way that even if like, okay, I see what you did, I see what happened here, but the fact that the last name is introduced not as Feyre's last name, but as Elaine and Nesta's last name, it's really clever. It's, you know, showing that Feyre doesn't own that last name. It's definitely a hindsight thing, but smooth as hell.
It is very, very smooth. Maybe she didn't know what the last name should be and then realized she had to give the family a last name and was like, what does Feyre do? She's an archer. Archeron.
Archeron. I mean, it's a great last name.
It is a good last name. We move on now to the dinner scene. And this is such an interesting battle for power here. Let me share some observations I have. Nesta, as matriarch or acting head of the household, sits at the head of the table, a direct opposite of how Rhysand acts with the inner circle. This puts Nesta and Rhys at odds, as is reflected in the anger Rhys expresses later in the chapter. Nesta also determines when the meal is over, which 100% reminds me of Tamlin in Thorns and Roses. Feyre also struggles to eat human food since it becomes ash in her mouth. Actually, I think she said this same thing about it, even when she still was human the last time she was here.
She's always been a pretentious bitch. Yeah. Good. Great to know.
I think you've already kind of answered this. Is this a sign that Feyre's human power is no longer compatible with her fae body?
If you remember, and how could you not, because we mention it every single freaking episode, food is power. Then this is a perfect way of showing that humans are less than and not powerful as fae. This is a wonderful example of show, not tell. That's what I've been asking for. Thank you, SJM.
Nesta perceives this as a judgment that the food they have isn't good enough and wants to attack Feyre for this wound to her pride. Feyre has a little of a dramatic response and says, I can eat, drink, fuck, and fight just as well as I did before. Better even.
I'm just imagining what this all means. Like, I'm breaking it down, right? Like, she can eat better. Does that mean she has, like, bigger stomach or something? Like, she can eat better or she has more polite manners. But it's the I can fuck better than before. You were with what's his face?
Tamlin?
No, the guy before Tamlin.
Oh, Isaac Hale.
Isaac Hale. Anyone can fuck better after Isaac Hale.
Well, but she did fuck Tamlin when she was human.
Oh, so do you think it got better? Like, she got better after
yeah,
she
like, what if
became
she got
fae?
more stamina?
No, she lost her stamina. She can't hike a hill, remember? I want to dissect this. Like, we've already established she has no stamina.
To me, in my mind, when I read this, it made me think of Twilight and the difference in sex between Bella and Edward when she's not vampire versus when she is. And they like break the floorboards when she is a vampire.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of.
I'm also thinking that towards the end, Feyre just literally laid there in bed.
Yeah, that's true.
And now she's saying that she fucked better than before. So then how bad was it with Isaac?
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Or is this a subliminal message to Rhys?
Hey, baby, I fuck better than before. But then it's still like, who was the before?
Yeah, it's
Tamlin.
That's true.
It's just awkward.
It is awkward. So, as I mentioned, this is a little dramatic. Is this dramatic statement and the fact that Feyre forces herself to eat her trying to prove something? And if so, what is that?
I think it proves that Feyre quite literally cannot stomach their human weakness.
Okay, I'll take it.
Thank you. Thank you. I was like waiting for my grade approval from you and be like, excuse me, was that a pass or fail?
Pass.
Thank you. Let's take a moment to fangirl here because this is the moment everyone's so excited for. Cassian and Azriel finally get to meet Nesta and Elaine. Just having the hindsight of everything here. Like, Silver Flames warning, but just having, we're going to go into it. The hindsight, it's fantastic. So let's just take these moments and appreciate the start of all these complicated relationships. First, Azriel and Elaine. We know where this heads, or rather doesn't head. And there's a quote, a faint smile bloomed upon Azriel's mouth as he noticed Elaine's finger white-knuckled on the fork, but he kept silent.
Okay, I have a thought here.
Yeah.
Of course he's going to, like, fall for her in this moment. You want to know why?
Because he's imagining her holding his dick.
No.
Okay, we're not on the same wavelength. Why?
Because Feyre held cutlery in defense of her family in front of Tamlin.
Holy shit!
And she also held cutlery in front of Rhysand the first time he came into Tamlin's manor.
Ladies, if you want a man,
hold
cutlery. Like you're going to stab him.
I feel like SJM is giving us so many clues that Elaine is Feyre. Like they have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I will agree with that as we go forward, Elaine is Feyre.
Yeah.
And SJM is going to start shoving that down our throat very soon / already has. Elaine and Azriel are also described as the only civil ones there. And when Elaine addresses Azriel directly, quote, he set down his fork, blinking. I might even call him self-conscious.
So cute.
I might not think that they're endgame, but now do I think they're endgame? Maybe. I will say I reread the Secret Azriel chapter from Silver Flames, and I was just like, I just forget how hot he is for her.
He's so hot for her.
Like, just talking about, like, what was it? One of the lines was like, he can smell her arousal, and he just wanted to get on his knees and beg to taste it. And I was like, oh, Daddy Azzy.
Yeah.
Daddy Azzy.
I mean, I've been in love with these two since this moment right here.
I get it. I
know you're a Gwynreal.
I mean, am I? I think I'm just like pro Azriel having sex at this point.
This is true. I mean, Gwynreal's cute too, but so is Elreal, and I love all of it. Daddy Azzy just needs to have some sex.
Boy, does he.
He does.
Boy, I need that scene. Bad. Then we even have Cassian and Nesta's relationship, which starts off so freaking on brand. They get under each other's skin right away. Cassian is giving her a mocking smile, and Nesta is ignoring him. Feyre says, quote, a part of me shuddered at the havoc the two would wreak if they ever decided to stop fighting. It's so cute.
And it's just cute foreshadowing.
It is. The fact that everyone there has like instant sex appeal with one another. I don't relate to it.
I don't either.
No one's walked into the room and it's like, ooh, her instant chemistry. That's been reciprocated. Wow, this just got sad.
Yeah, I feel depressed.
I think we just need to walk into more rooms.
There you go. That's the answer.
It's because we keep staying home.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Like, who's going to come in?
Nobody.
No one.
The pizza man.
He doesn't even come inside.
It's true.
We just like leave the food at the door and leave.
Feyre observes Cassian and Nesta as two animals interacting. Quote, a wolf who had been circling a doe, only to find a mountain cat wearing its hide instead. Okay, is it coincidence that Feyre projects Cassian seeing Nesta as a mountain cat when, just a few chapters ago, Feyre herself saw Rhysand as a mountain cat?
No.
Dare I say, mountain cat equals mates?
Dare I say, Mountain Cat equals Nesta, Mountain Cat equals Rhys, therefore Rhys equals Nesta. I think they're the same.
I think they are more alike than they like to admit.
Yep, I think that's why they can't stand each other.
I think so too. And that's why Feyre ends up with Rhys, because
she's got her own weird daddy, mommy, sister issues.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of.
It's cool. That's like, you know, psychology. But yeah, no, I think like it definitely means mate, but I think it just shows how unbelievably strong-willed these two people are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I can see that.
How much that hurts their mates.
Yeah, I mean, there's a viciousness. It's also interesting that Cassian and Feyre are wolves.
Oh.
Dogs and cats.
Yeah.
Somehow they get along.
Oil and water.
Like my little dog and cat.
Flame and water. Oil and water and flame and water. Water does not get along.
Water wants to be its own thing.
Water's like, leave me alone. Water has the pizza man leave food at the door and no one comes into the room.
2 other random thoughts. Apparently anyone related to Feyre is assumed to be a doe. And also, I'm very, very done with all the animal references.
We said at the beginning, I think it was like the first episode where it's like, or at least on All Our Lives, we're like, there's going to be a lot of animal references.
And it just doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop. And it's so much more with women than it is with the men.
Yeah, men are usually a dog.
Which I get.
Right, fine. Or a pig.
Which I get.
Which I get. We call men that in real life anyway. But the amount of things women are called in this is absurd.
Yeah. It just doesn't stop.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Finally, at the end of this chapter, we get some amazing emotional intimacy between Feyre and Rhysand. And this is what makes Rhysand so different from Tamlin. He is willing to open up and talk to Feyre about everything. Feyre goes into bed and expresses her gratitude towards Rhysand for warming up the bed, and that's something that Rhys confesses Amarantha never did. Rhys is then very clear about his protectiveness over Feyre, and Feyre revealing her own frustrations over her sister. This protectiveness is when Rhysand says that he could roar with frustration with how her sisters treated her. That's like a very vulnerable thing to admit.
On Rhys's part?
Yeah, like, just saying on someone's part and saying, I'm mad at your family because of how poorly they treated you, and I couldn't stand being there with them.
Yeah, it is a vulnerable thing in the sense that Feyre could reject that. Like, you have no right to feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Or she could be honored at the righteous indignation.
I mean, it's his emotions.
Yeah.
And he's said it so clearly and without restraint. And I applaud that. I mean, just imagine how many people in your life could you actually just say, like, no, I'm mad on your behalf because of how they treated you.
Yeah, and especially when it's a family member.
No one gets to say that their siblings are shitty unless it's you.
Right. You're not allowed to tell me my siblings are shitty. But if you did and they were, I would appreciate it.
I would never. I like your siblings. And they like me.
They do like you.
Also, Rhysand asks Feyre when her birthday is. And that is what you're supposed to do, Tamlin, is ask who you like when their birthday is.
It's true. One thing I wonder about is the fact that Rhys really dwells on the fact that Feyre was born on the winter solstice. Like, he asks her, you were really born on the winter solstice?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Winter solstice is the longest night of the year.
Yeah.
I think it's just like him getting that reconfirmation that she's my mate.
I just imagine, like, I don't want to, like, demean it because I journal, but I can imagine him journaling it, kind of being like, 100 as to why we're meant to be together.
Right, exactly. If there were not enough signs already, this is another one.
Right? It just feels like one of those things where I would 100% go back and be like, Amy,
this is a sign.
Oh my God, I think we're meant to be together.
No, I totally agree. This is something I would do too.
And finally, Rhys and Feyre have a shared moment where they reflect that, quote, a reminder that he had once bet on me. He had been the only one under the mountain who had put money on me defeating the Mittengard worm. It's just a beautiful moment they have there.
It is a beautiful moment.
You know, it's like when you're laying in bed, like in the same room, you're about to go to sleep and you don't, the lights are off, you say goodnight, but then you just start talking. Like, that's how best friends are made.
It is. And it's so nice to have this moment when Feyre is trying to not be physically attracted to him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just showing that they have an emotional connection beyond a physical connection.
And whenever people point out, like, Tamlin and Rhys are the same, it's like, yes, they're the same, but this is where they deviate drastically.
Exactly.
And this is why we love Rhysand.
Despite his flaws.
Those flaws, man. I almost wish we never get a book with Azriel because I don't want to dissect him. I just want him to be like
Daddy
Azzy forever because I know the issues he'll have. Maybe I do want to dissect it. Yes. I don't know, talking about like the bad boys with the issues, the hot bad boys, and you're like, no, they're not good for you and stuff. It just like makes me reminiscent on my 20s. I'm like, yeah, bad boy, shiny toy with the price, I bought it. But the difference is that they never turn good for you.
They don't want to be good.
They're just going to hurt you or your feelings and cry.
Yep.
So I can't romanticize it.
You can't fix them.
No. And they're not good. They're not like secretly good.
No.
They're a bad boy.
They're a bad boy for a reason.
Yeah. In chapter 25, Feyre goes with Rhysand into the woods and expresses her desire and frustration of wanting to see more of the world on a map. Quote, he'd, Rhysand, once showed me a blank one when I belonged to Tamlin and been little more than a spy and prisoner. Here's a question I ask. Did Feyre belong to Tamlin? We once asked this question, who owns Feyre Archeron? And while the answer was quite literally everyone at the time, now that we've progressed into the story and we have hindsight, can we still say the same answer?
So Feyre is saying here that she once belonged to Tamlin. I don't think she can say that now, but I think we can say Rhys is certainly acting like he owns Feyre. But as we will see in a few chapters, that's no longer the case, and I will make my argument at that point.
Well, do you feel like Tamlin ever owned Feyre?
I don't know that he owned her. I believe she allowed him to treat her like a pet.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like we're now going back on what we said episodes before, but I do, in hindsight, and with all of this, just with the growth of the character, was it Feyre being owned or was it Feyre being complacent?
It was Feyre being complacent.
Exactly. Like he just got to pretend until she woke up.
Wow. Talk about lack of consent. Because think of it as you're trying to do something inappropriate with someone who's sleeping.
And she was like sleeping on life.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just trying to hurry up and progress with everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're basically, I mean, again, he's not forcing, but at the same time, he's not forcing it, right? Like,
right. She's just going through the motions.
Exactly. But there's a reason why the motions are happening pretty quickly to hurry up and lock her down.
Right. Feyre begins training her magical abilities with Rhysand at this point. They're still in the Mortal Lands, and Feyre sends Rhysand back to her family's estate so she can practice in peace. Before Rhysand leaves, however, he tells Feyre that she can shout down the bond if she needs anything. Feyre asks, what? Literally shout at the tattoo? Rhys, you could try rubbing it on certain body parts and I might come faster. First, the double entendre is hilarious.
I did not catch the second meaning of him coming faster.
Oh, you didn't?
No, it was like, I like the rubbing on certain parts. I was like, he. And then when I read your note, I'm like, oh, that's hot.
Yeah, I mean, that's why at the end of that scene, Feyre thinks back on what he says and she chuckles.
No, I know. But again, I thought it was just the rubbing on certain parts.
No. But I know what you're saying. But I think also Feyre also thought, and she only catches the double entendre when she thinks back on it.
Yeah.
Which is cute.
It's also just sexy.
I know you just said it was sexy, but it actually isn't charming.
Shit. All right, let's continue into that. Yeah, no, not at all.
To me, it parallels the dirty limericks that Tamlin wrote for Feyre in Thorns and Roses.
No, I will fight this / agree. Okay, so yes.
Yes, is it hot? No, it's not charming.
Oh, okay, give me a second here. So is it reminiscent? Yes, in the sense that he's overtly flirting with her in a sexual way, right? Mm-hmm. There is that. Mm-hmm. The main difference is that when Tamlin wrote the dirty limericks, he was using her lack of knowledge as fuel for his seduction.
Yes.
Rhys is just horny.
Fair. 1 point for Jacqueline.
Woohoo! And yet somehow I still feel like I lose.
No.
They're not real.
They're not real.
No one's real. There's no bad boy, pizza boy.
The notorious pen and paper that Feyre and Rhys use to pass notes back and forth to one another makes an appearance now. And Feyre is so distracted by this that she is caught unaware by the adder. Before Feyre realizes that it's the adder who has caught her, Feyre, quote, thrashed, biting and clawing at her captor. Though she's not compared to an animal, she does certainly fight like one here. Yes, I see your note.
OTP right here.
OTP. Oh, if they had compared Feyre to a mountain cat right now, I would have believed that they were OTP.
For anyone who does not follow us on TikTok, we made a very compelling argument
that Feyre and the adder are OTP.
Yeah. We're so ridiculous.
We're stupid.
We're genius.
Do they not go hand in hand sometimes?
No.
All right, chapter 26, folks. If you were not hot for Daddy Azzy yet, then you must be by the end of this chapter because hot damn.
Daddy is so freaking hot in this. It's insane. Like, yes. I love how we're just like lusting over him, but what he did was like slam down with it like onto the ground with an invisible mask and like ready to go like tear this guy apart.
It's hot.
All right, call me the adder.
Think of him like slamming into the
me.
I didn't want that visual, but thank you. My visual was him slamming into the snow and it like flurries around him majestically.
Flurrying snow is sexy.
It's the contrast.
It's the him walking with a dead face towards his prey that gets me.
It was the him slamming into the ground like an Avenger and the flurrying snow. No, I agree. It's the stalking and the I'm going to come kill you thing.
God, we have issues.
We do have issues.
No. The hot thing was the come kill you part. That was the best part.
That was the best part, actually.
The slamming and the killing. Oh my God.
When Feyre is released from the adder's grasp, she takes a fighting stance where she crouches knife angled. This reminds me of 2 scenes from Thorns and Roses, which I alluded to when we were talking about Elaine. When Tamlin first bursts into the Archeron family's cabin, Feyre grabs a knife to defend herself and her family. When Rhysand visits Tamlin's estate for the first time in the dining room, Feyre grabs a butter knife off the table. And now that I know that Asriel smiles at Elaine when he sees her holding her fork, now I just think the commentary in their head must be, oh, that's cute.
That's adorable.
Yeah, I'd tap that.
I'm just going to constantly keep a fork in my purse. Or a little butter knife.
Just go around and clutch it
with a butter knife if I see a hot guy walking by. Butter knife.
Is this significant? Maybe not.
But it reminds us of who Feyre is and shows us that she is coming back to her survivor instincts. It takes being attacked for Feyre to realize Tamlin may have been right about the issue of her safety. Feyre thinks, quote, "It didn't excuse anything." As readers, do we suddenly give Tamlin more credit, or are we like Feyre and think that this maybe only furthers the argument that Tamlin should have prepared her rather than hide and coddle her?
It's all around not great. Both avenues suck so hard. Tamlin kept Feyre in the dark, but Rhysand used her as bait and didn't tell her. That's a special kind of asshole that only Rhys can be, but it's like, which one's worse? Like, it's a choose your poison situation where I guess we are supposed to feel that Rhys is okay because she finds out relatively quickly, but is it worse that, yes, she finds out, but he used her?
I think it goes back to the conversation we had last episode. It's what can she tolerate?
Mm-hmm. And, as we're about to get into, I don't think she could tolerate this one.
Despite Feyre's request to be informed of schemes, Rhysand does not own using Feyre as bait to lure the adder and his choice to withhold that information from her. Rhys even says, maybe next time, implying he may or may not tell her of his next scheme. Feyre has a right to be mad here, but Rhysand appears equally mad that Feyre forgot her strength and that she stopped fighting. My question for you is Rhys mad at Feyre about this specific moment? I don't think so, because Feyre doesn't have the tools to fight here. I think Rhys honestly has been punishing Feyre this whole time for wanting to die. Punishing Feyre for accepting her fate with Tamlin instead of fighting Tamlin for what she deserved.
Oh yes, this is definitely equal parts training as it is punishment. Sure, it works, right? Like Feyre winnows, but at what cost? He pushes her too far, and Rhys is just flat out being cruel here. I am personally more of a positive affirmation person, and this method would definitely not work. I probably would just like sass at him and joke too much, and then play dirty and pretend like I fell down and then kick him in the balls.
Sounds like something Moore would do, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm just cracking up because this wouldn't fly for either of us.
No.
Like, you have to be a very specific kind of person where this can work.
Right. And he just happens to be right that Feyre is.
And every single heroine that's ever been just happens to be that.
True.
Give me a realistic heroine that's just like, oh, I'm sorry, positive affirmation is my love language.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want me to succeed, I'm going to need compliments.
Yep.
That I want, like, that's the realistic thing.
But it doesn't create angst.
We can make it angsty.
I'll tell you you're pretty while I make you feel angsty.
Just more of like, hey, like, good job. You can't make it angsty.
No, you can't. Rage consumes Feyre here, but instead of being like Tamlin's rage, I think Feyre is exhibiting Rhys's rage. Feyre thinks, quote, if I could turn myself into smoke, into air and night and stars, that should be a hint that that's Rhys. Feyre even grows talons, not claws. And who has talons? Rhys does. Think of his talon toes from Under the Mountain in Thorns and Roses.
Ew, I hate his talon toes. They were never necessary. They're still not necessary.
Nope. What episode was that? 7 or 8?
Oh, no, because no one liked episode 7.
That's right. It's either 8 or 9.
In season 1.
Yep.
When Feyre kind of sees him and looks at his feet and he has like talon toes.
In becoming like Rhys in her rage, Feyre is able to winnow. More importantly, and to your point, Jacqueline, I think that Feyre is demonstrating a pattern that when she allows herself to feel strong negative emotions, especially rage, she is able to harness her powers. And in that way, she's very much like Tamlin and Rhys.
I'm going to circle back to this idea. Did Rhysand push her too far? Rhys is clearly enjoying it. He thinks they're playing a game, but she's losing it more and more and more, and he's in his own mind. So do you think, Amy, that he went too far?
I do think he went too far, and I do think, to your point, he is playing a game. I think this is a misstep on Rhys's part. I think that they're not communicating.
Mm-hmm.
They learn how to play well together.
Yeah.
But right now, he's playing and she's not on board. He's not catching her at the right time, and he's not learning to adapt.
I mean, I can only imagine the anger she must feel. She's trying to express how angry she is, and all he does is keep laughing.
And keep taunting her.
Again, I just cry at that point.
Yeah, I just start.
I'd
walk away.
Sit down, I just like sit on the floor or walk away and be like, just start crying. Are you mad at me? No.
Stay away.
I can't talk to you right now.
Thanks to these short chapters, we're already in chapter 27.
I love how short chapter 27 is. It is so poignant that this is all of 2 pages, not even 2 full pages. The whole chapter is just a full stop. This is where Feyre is angry and she's had enough. In fact, this is probably the angriest we've seen Feyre in this book and maybe any book.
I think she's more mad when she finds out that they're mates.
Yeah, I'll give that to you.
Thanks.
Up until this point.
Up until this point. I think overall, this would be the second most mad.
Yeah, I agree.
After successfully tackling Rhys, Feyre warns Rhys to not use her as bait. She tells him, quote, "You said I could be a weapon. Teach me to become one. Don't use me like a pawn. And if being one is part of my work for you, then I'm done. Done." So I think Feyre's anger has a few layers here. Feyre's pissed that Rhys kept her out of the loop after she specifically asked to be informed of his schemes. This is also a very stark reminder of the Spring Court. Feyre feels like a pawn to Rhys. By using her and keeping her out of the loop, Rhys is treating Feyre no better than Tamlin did. Tamlin constantly protected her, but also kept her out of the loop. As we've mentioned, they have both been treating Feyre like a pet. This is exactly how I treat my animals. I never communicate my plans to them.
If only they just spoke better English.
That would be nice. Actually, no. I would never sleep.
No. Feyre can't stop being used no matter what she does. She stops being with Tamlin, she starts working for Rhys, she starts to train, and yet she continues to be a pawn with no value other than her own naivety.
Rhys apologizes at this point, but Feyre does not accept his apology. Quote, "I wondered how often he said those two words. I didn't care." I think Feyre's not able to accept Rhys's apology because he sounds like Tamlin to her at this point. So Feyre treats Rhys the way she would treat Tamlin, and she ignores him.
Yes, I really like this point that you made. It's so reminiscent of Tamlin, it's an instant apology. And I will say that this probably comes from a more honest place with Rhysand, rather than just wanting to hurry up and cover it up and make peace real fast. It's still super fucked up.
So I kind of disagree. I do think that this is a fast apology, and I do think he's surprised when, after he's said sorry 2 times, Feyre still doesn't forgive him.
No, I mean, it's a fast apology, but I don't think it's like the same kind of fast apology that Tamlin did. I mean, this is 100% speculation, and I don't know if I have enough text to agree with me on this. But when Tamlin apologized, it always seemed like it was more of a, no, it never happened. It never happened. Like, sorry, it's done.
Forget
I
that
apologize.
it happened.
Forgive and forget. Rhys reiterates it.
Yeah.
And by reiterating it, it's not done, right? Like, he's not walking away from it. It's not like a sorry, okay, let's forget about it.
Yeah.
And what's hard here is that Rhys isn't able to make up with Feyre the same way that Feyre was able to make up with Tamlin, which is sex, right? Feyre and Rhys don't have that connection yet. So, like, he's only left with a real apology.
I think that's a great point. I think you've convinced me that he's not trying to sweep anything under the rug. He can only offer sincere apology.
He doesn't have any other tools in his arsenal.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
When Rhys tells Feyre they will go home to Velaris, Feyre lashes out by telling him Velaris isn't her home. Now, is this true? Or does Feyre only say it to hurt Rhys? Note that the last words Feyre uses in this chapter are my family's house, not home. To me, I wonder if this is a clue that Feyre is just lashing out because she's emotional, not because she truly believes Velaris isn't her home.
I think it's still not her home. I think that she's being honest here. But like Rhysand, Feyre is learning how to use honesty. Rhysand uses honesty as a shield, and now Feyre is learning how to use honesty as a weapon. I think I'm getting snaps.
You are getting snaps.
Well, thank you. Even Cassian and Nesta's last interaction sets so much groundwork for their future relationship. While Cassian pretends to be something he's not, a gentleman, he bows. And Nesta is something she's not, a lady who makes a vulgar gesture. Even Nesta's dress is ice blue because she's cold towards Cassian, and he merely uses it to his advantage by laughing and looking at her with a predatory intent.
I feel like you sometimes do this to people.
What?
Or looking at people and just laughing.
Yeah.
You do that?
I do that. Oopsies. Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. You deserved it.
They all deserve it, though. No.
Some.
I'm Cassian. Hi, guys. Actually, we've said that before.
That you're Cassian?
That I am probably, out of all the characters, I think I'm the most like Cassian.
I think so, too.
It's on brand. I get it. I'm like him. And I'm just reiterating all this because it's small, it's not much, and we do love to see Cassian and Nesta. But it's small things like this where it's show, not tell. And I'm proud of SJM for that.
Yeah, and she's just doing a lot of groundwork for what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time since I've talked about how Feyre's environment reflects her or how she's feeling, but we get a good example of that here. It almost feels very Jane Austen or Charlotte Bronte-like of SJM, and I love it. Look at the weather in Valoris upon Feyre's return to the city. Quote, "Morning mist still twined through the city and the mountains around it. The chill also remained, but not nearly as unforgiving as the cold of the mortal world."
It's beautiful. I love that you pointed it out, the Bronte and Austen comparison, because it is. This was really good writing.
It is, and it's a very specific style choice.
Yeah.
Feyre is still mad at Rhys. This is conveyed not only by the weather, but also by the fact that there is no direct dialogue between any characters in the early action of the chapter. It's all indirect dialogue, as if Feyre isn't really present with everyone else. After Rhys shares what he learns from the Adder with Feyre, and after Feyre writes her breakup letter to Tamlin, which we will cover, the weather then changes. Quote, "The mist wreathing the city had wandered off, revealing a bright cloudless sky, and somehow my head felt clearer than it had in days, months."
This is such a well-written chapter, and I'll even say the chapters leading up to this were really well-written, especially since we've been giving SJM crap for a lot of those other chapters. But you can tell she spent time on these. Mm-hmm. This had a lot of revision. This was really well done, and it's moments like these where it's like, no, she is a good writer.
Yeah, it reminds me of chapter 1 of Thorns and Roses and how tight it is. It's very intentional. Every little piece of information is important. It's really beautiful.
Because she probably revised that a million times because that's the first thing that all the editors, agents had to read.
Right.
Although she was already signed at that point. But, still, first chapters have to be real tight. And she's found her stride at this point.
I think so, too. Once Feyre is finally alone in the townhouse, Feyre finds Nuala and Cerridwen so that she can eat. I don't think it's insignificant that she eats alone in the aftermath of her newfound powers. Also, remember, she hasn't eaten anything tasty or that she could stomach in at least a day, so it's important that she is refueling herself.
She's refueling herself on cheese and chive scones. It's just really tasty.
Sounds very tasty.
Sounds delicious.
When Rhys returns from the Hewn City, where he's visited Azriel and the Adder, Feyre expects Rhys to shut her out like Tamlin used to, because, honestly, that's exactly what Rhys has been doing up until this point. Instead, Rhys offers information to Feyre. This comes across as a peace offering to me, and Feyre thinks so as well. And it may be a more sincere apology than the paints Tamlin gave Feyre, or honestly, any apology Tamlin ever gave Feyre.
This is totally a peace offering, but rather than the joint knowledge being the thing that pardons Rhysand, Feyre ends up being more mad at Tamlin once she finds out the truth. She didn't even really address her anger with Rhysand, she just walks away really pissed off at Tamlin. Did Rhys know what he was doing here?
I honestly don't think so. I don't think it was intentional on his part. I think he's desperate to get her forgiveness. And he knows he did wrong by not giving her information. And so how he can write it is to give her information. I don't know that there was an ulterior motive there.
Mm-hmm. There may not be ulterior motives, but there's always some little extra hiding, which I'll get into.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power, and Rhys is truly offering Feyre power. He's giving her the opportunity to learn what his and his team do in order to get information. He's letting Feyre decide if she wants to know. What I like about this is that it's an all or nothing moment. He's not offering Feyre an abridged version. She can either know it or not at all. And rather than feeling like an ultimatum, it appears more empowering. Feyre's a grown-up and she gets to make the choices, and now she gets to decide whether she's willing to be a part of it.
I like that point.
As I was kind of looking it over, there could be a moment of, is it empowering? I do think, there's something empowering about it. Like, hey, sometimes war isn't half and half. Like, you don't get to have it one way, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You have to throw yourself into it.
I agree. And what I like about this is that Rhys is really giving her a choice now. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like it's the illusion of choice we talked about last episode. I believe that it's a real choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
When Rhys lets Feyre into his mind, Feyre observes that, quote, "Darkness flowed through me, soft and seductive." Rhys's darkness is always described this way. It's not something Feyre fears, unlike the darkness of the prison or under the mountain. Feyre is notorious for differentiating between the types of darkness, if you haven't noticed, so it's definitely something worth paying attention to.
I do like that. There's different types of darkness, and Feyre embraces that. While in Rhys's memory, he thinks about Feyre being mad at him, but he's also feeling proud of her and justifies his actions from his point of view. It's really such a convenient way to explain actions and the way that he feels and being honest, but it's also told through the Rhys lens, and he's having her see what he wants her to see. He feels guilt, and because Feyre's in his memories, she feels guilt. He feels pride, she feels pride. I'm not saying that he doesn't feel all of these things, but the fact that Feyre doesn't see Rhys thinking about her as his mate proves that he is hiding some information from her, / having her only see what he wants her to see.
In all caps, I wrote, fabulous.
Thank you.
It's a great observation.
Yeah, like you're telling me that he wouldn't be like, my mate. Like, you know, in his head, he only calls her my mate.
Right, or just like, how dare he touch my mate?
Yeah, I can't believe my mate's mad at me.
Right. Despite Rhys's many similarities to Tamlin that have been triggering for Feyre, we are reminded that Rhys is different. Rhys wants to splatter the adder on the walls for what was done to Feyre. This reminds me of the paints that Tamlin destroyed. However, unlike Tamlin, Rhys is more controlled. He thinks, quote, I needed the adder to send a message more than I needed my own vengeance. I do wonder to what extent this is being told through a lens that is filtered for Feyre. I don't know why that was important to say, but that's what I thought.
Well, I just said that it was filtered for Feyre.
Do you think he had to filter the thought about the adder too?
Oh, about that specific thought of like, I need this more. I think not really. I think that was his real thought that he would let her see.
Okay.
Because he's trying to show her how protective he is of her.
That's true.
Rhys, we're coming back to this, apologizes to Feyre in an honest and vulnerable way. He's apologizing, like I said earlier, without sex. And that's something that her and Tamlin could not figure out how to do. So now that she has this apology, now that she has this explanation, what does she do? She gets mad and decides to go write Tamlin a breakup letter.
So you said earlier that she doesn't actually deal with her anger at Rhys. She just goes and writes Tamlin. I wonder to what extent, because she's never learned how to accept forgiveness without sex, she has to direct her energy towards Tamlin because she can't have sex with Rhys.
Oh, I totally believe that. It's just such the strangest moment, right? That here's Rhysand being honest, apologizing, and she's like, hold my beer. Need to go yell at Tamlin. It is a very strange thing. There's a lot of tension, right?
There is, yeah.
For Feyre, aggression, that physical, it means sex for her.
Yep.
So here she is, horny and angry. And all she can do is write the world's shittiest breakup letter, which I will read.
I was going to say, how bad is it, Jack?
I will read you this horrible letter. I can't take this seriously. I left of my own free will. I am cared for and safe. I am grateful for all that you did for me and all that you gave. Please don't come looking for me. I'm not coming back. What kind of letter is that? That I dropped my paper. I wrote here, my texts to my exes have been significantly longer and healthier than what Feyre just wrote.
It's no wonder that they assume Rhys is controlling Feyre.
Right? Does Tamlin even know that she can read and write now?
Probably not.
Like, how does he know what her handwriting even looks like?
He probably doesn't.
She needs to draw a little painting for him is what she needs to do.
What would it contain?
Oh, that's a great question. Now that I'm thinking about it, like stick figure Feyre walking away from stick figure Tamlin.
Leave me alone.
And then it's just like walking away and then it progresses and her being like strong and happy now.
That's funny.
I think that's how it should have been handled. Would have been better than this. Tamlin has lost his right to get to know anything about Feyre and what she's doing, but he is allowed to feel confused. So much could have been solved if Feyre was just willing to do more, write more. She doesn't owe it to see him in person because what he did was unforgivable, but Feyre owes it to her own future to really give a finality to this chapter. Instead, her confrontational issues have now ruined everything for everyone. After writing the world's worst breakup letter in history of all breakup letters, Feyre feels good about herself. And I get it, after a good chapter closing moment with an ex, it is relieving, but I'm still mad at her here. Quote, I wanted it. Life, people, I wanted to see it. Feel the rush through my blood. No boundaries, no limits to what I might encounter or do. I feel that sentence in my post-breakup bones. I am definitely biased, but I feel like that's one of the most beautiful lines written.
I'm slightly amused because you go from, I'm mad at her, but this is really beautiful.
It is. It was a
conflicting
things. You know, I can separate it. How did I like how she handled it with Tamlin? No. But let's party, girl.
Let's go. Hot girl summer.
Right? Yeah. Hot girl summer. That's what Feyre is about. She just wrote her ex, leave me alone, off to go have my hot girl summer. More Amren, girls trip.
No girls trip for Feyre because Rhys wants her to rest. Quote, I'm no one's pet. Don't coddle me, Feyre reminds Rhys. Feyre makes it clear she will make decisions about how she uses her body, and it feels like a very feminist moment, and I'm here for it. Going back to your question about who owns Feyre Archeron, I think Feyre Archeron finally owns herself.
Agreed.
When Rhys waits for Feyre to trudge upstairs to brood and sleep, Feyre thinks, enough. I've had enough sleeping.
I love that this is a moment that Feyre is truly awake. We as readers feel that just as deeply as Feyre. This description here is absolutely fantastic.
As we said last episode, Feyre was awakened and has been awake since her encounter with the Weaver. Feyre has been empowered by her rage at both men in her life, and she's finally taking ownership for herself. In response, Rhys doesn't try to dominate Feyre. Instead, quote, his mouth twisted in a smile so few saw. Real amusement, perhaps a bit of happiness edged with relief. The male behind the High Lord's mask. And I love Rhys all over again for it. Damn him.
But this is Rhys redeeming himself, right? He told Feyre that she was his salvation. And we can see that he is being salvaged. Like, he's actually healing. He's redeeming himself to the readers as well.
Yeah.
Like, this is it.
Yeah.
He was like, Feyre, you're my salvation. And look, he's learning.
Yeah, what's interesting is that there's a correlation between Feyre becoming more like herself and Rhys becoming more like himself.
Because they do bring out the best in each other.
They do bring out the best in each other.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love how we just go from shitting on him so hard to like,
to be like, oh,
but I love it.
As Feyre prepares for dinner with the inner circle, Amren enters Feyre's bedroom. Nuala and Cerridwen immediately disappear to report to Asriel, or at least that's what Amren tells Feyre. Feyre and the reader learn at this point that Az disobeys Rhys in this regard.
He's a bad daddy.
Bad daddy Azzy.
Bad daddy Azzy.
Feyre's trauma is coming out at this point, as if Sarah J. Maas wants to remind readers that even though Feyre is ready to live life, she still has some unresolved issues. Not only does Feyre ask if the Wraiths are spying on her, she also assumes Rhysand would want to punish Az for disobeying orders.
Feyre with unresolved issues.
Oh my.
What?
The fact that Rhys doesn't punish his subordinates the way Tamlin punished Lucien for looking at him wrong speaks volumes. Also, no tithe. We're once again reminded that though Rhys and Tamlin are similar, they are also very different. How would we summarize these differences? I would say Rhys values loyalty, cunning, and compassion. Thanks, Amren, for the words. While Tamlin values strict obedience. When Feyre uses this as an opportunity to return Amren's amulet, and Amren tells her to keep it, Feyre realizes that Amren has lied to her about the amulet's purpose. Feyre hates when people lie to her. Look at how pissed she was when Rhys kept information from her. But I think that Feyre has grown. We've seen that she's able to forgive Rhys, or be okay with him lying to her. Feyre is definitely annoyed at Amren here, but she doesn't go ballistic. Again, growth. I think this is because Feyre sees how the lie didn't impact her negatively, but benefited her. And Amren got nothing out of it in the process.
Is this the moment Feyre accepts that lying is just how this court works? That it's always done with the best intentions, but always with rough execution? And then here's the question I ask, is this a trait that Feyre eventually picks up?
Short answer, yes.
Long answer, no.
Long answer, yes, yes, yes.
Long answer, no. I haven't thought about it, I don't know.
The answer is yes, because think about when she encounters Lucien in the forest, and...
So she's not lying to him. Oh yeah, she does lie to him, never mind.
There's lying...
And she is like night court lying style.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
She takes on Rhys's persona.
I mean, it's the night court persona, because
It
that's
is
what they all do is,
Yep.
lie. But they do it amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Here's what I want. I don't think Feyre picks it up amongst her court, because clearly Rhys is comfortable doing it. Amren's comfortable doing it. Even Moore's comfortable doing it because she's lying to the two of them. Cassian, like everyone is comfortable lying to one another so long as they're helping. But I don't think Feyre learns to do that amongst her friends.
I don't think so either. I think she only uses it to protect her friends.
Yeah. She's still better than them.
100.
All right, now we're going to go into some breadcrumbs, and these breadcrumbs have major SJM spoilers for all SJM works, so skip ahead. In chapter 22, quote, I was born stronger than anyone in my family, even the males, and you can't hide it because they could smell it, the same way you can smell a High Lord's air before he comes to power. My power awoke in full force, and even the Godsdamn's mountain trembled around us. Okay, if you have not gone back and listened to our interview with a happy hermit, Lily, please go back and listen to that one. It is the best interview because she goes in and talks about some theories that she has that maybe Moore is actually High Lady of the now disappeared Dusk Court.
I love this because there's also a parallel to Rhys. When he came into his power, the mountain shook as well.
Mm-hmm. Moore's too powerful here for her only power to be truth.
Yep, agreed.
And while I don't think that SJM has done much to develop the character, she definitely has plans for Moore's power later on.
I agree. Also in chapter 22, he, Cassian, believes he's a lowborn bastard, not worthy of his rank or life here. This is a clue to Cassian's mentality, which we get to explore more in Silver Flames. And it's so much better because the timing coincides with him meeting Nesta.
Chapter 23, quote, I told myself that I failed. If Amarantha crossed the wall, she'd, Elaine, be next. The way she'd be next if the King of Hybern shattered the wall. Feyre, you have once again jinxed yourself and therefore damned your sisters.
She did it to herself.
Every time.
In chapter 24, Feyre thinks, so beautiful and young and alive, but when would that change? I could give them a few good years, safe years, until then. Nope, you jinxed yourself again, Feyre.
She doesn't even give them a few safe months.
No.
Horrible emissary.
No, horrible.
Also in chapter 24, Feyre says of Nesta, she's her own creature. And Nesta really is her own creature once she is made into a fae.
In chapter 24, quote, a blind, solid tug on the bond, cooling darkness sweeping into me, my temper, my senses, calming that fire. I scrambled to throw my mental shields up, but they were intact. Is this the mating bond? It's similar to how Feyre and Rhysand communicate after their bond is broken by Hybern and Feyre goes into Tamlin's lands. Staying in chapter 24, Nesta, I have little interest in ever setting foot in your lands, so I'll have to take your word for it. These women, these Archeron sisters, just can't stop jinxing themselves. Everyone fucks themselves over.
Yeah.
In chapter 28, Feyre/Rhys thinks, Cassian was all hot temper that could be used to forge and weld. Think Nesta and Silver Flames, folks.
Finally, also in chapter 28, quote, but you know how far Tamlin can be driven to protect what he thinks is his. Yes, the rest of the book.
The rest of the book. At the start of this episode, we asked, how has Feyre's perception of who or what she is changed? Jack?
Okay, there's a little two-parter here. It's definitely changed because, one, she's even trying to figure out what she is. At the beginning of this book, Feyre was more about feeling like she's damned, feeling like she's not worthy of being alive. She didn't really have a feeling of anything, really. At least now she's trying to figure out, is she human? Is she fae? Like, what is her story here? I guess what the major thing I would say here is that the biggest difference is Feyre is now trying to answer that question herself.
I agree. I think for once, and we're going to see this especially in the Summer Court and thereafter, that it's no longer a binary.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to this, it was she's not human, she's fae, or she's not fae, she's human. Now she's beginning to embrace the fact that she is something else, and that something else isn't bad.
Yeah, because she's surrounded by other.
Right.
Everyone in the Night Court is an other in one way, shape, or form.
Exactly. And that it's okay to be other.
Yeah. Good job, Feyre.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform.
Next week, we will be exploring chapters 29 through 31 of A Court of Mist and Fury.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo.
Or find us on TikTok and Instagram at the handle BookTalkForBookTalk.
Bye.
Bye.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes per detail.